I watched on my phone as my neighbor walked right up to my porch, grabbed my package, and carried it into his house like it was his own. That was his biggest mistake. I was sitting in my home office on a Wednesday afternoon, mid-March, the kind of gray Ohio day where the sky looks like dirty cotton and spring feels like it will never actually arrive. I had been on a conference call with a client in Cincinnati, going over their quarterly tax projections, when my Ring doorbell notification popped up on my phone screen. I almost ignored it, almost, but something made me tap that little icon, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. There he was, Derek Lawson, my next-door neighbor of 7 months. He walked up my front steps like he owned the place. He didn't even look around first this time. He just bent down, picked up the brown cardboard box that FedEx had dropped off 12 minutes earlier, and tucked it under his arm. Then he turned and walked back to his house, disappearing through his front door without a single glance back. I sat there frozen, watching the replay loop on my screen while my client droned on about depreciation schedules. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. This was the 4th package in 2 months, the 4th one. And now I had proof, clear, undeniable, timestamp verified proof that my neighbor was a thief. If you have ever been stolen from, you know the feeling. It is not just anger, it is violation. It is the realization that someone you have to see every single day, someone whose lawn borders yours, whose garbage can sit next to yours on Tuesday mornings, has decided that what belongs to you belongs to them, and they do not care. They don't care about your property, your peace of mind, or the basic social contract that keeps civilization from falling apart. I ended my call early that day, told my client I had a personal emergency. In a way, I did. Because in that moment, watching Derek's smug face on my phone screen, I made a decision. I was done being a victim. I was done calling the police and being told there was nothing they could do. I was done watching this man wave at my security camera like it was some kind of joke. Derek Lawson had no idea who he was dealing with. I am not a violent man. I am not a confrontational man. I am a 42-year-old accountant who has spent the last 20 years of his life understanding systems, tracking numbers, and finding discrepancies that other people miss. I am patient, I am methodical, and when someone pushes me far enough, I do not get angry, I get strategic. This is the story of how I took down my package-stealing neighbor using nothing but cat litter, a GPS tracker, and the federal postal system. If you enjoy stories about people getting exactly what they deserve, hit that subscribe button right now, because this one is going to satisfy you in ways you did not know you needed. Let me take you back to where it all started. I moved to Maple Street in Westerville, Ohio in the summer of 2016. My wife Sarah and I had been married for 3 years. We had just had our first daughter, Emma, and we were finally ready to stop renting and buy our first home. The house was a 3-bedroom colonial, nothing fancy, but it had good bones and a backyard big enough for a swing set.
The neighborhood was exactly what we wanted. Established trees, sidewalks where people actually walked their dogs, and neighbors who waved when you drove past but did not show up unannounced expecting you to make small talk. For 8 years, we lived in peace on that street. We painted the shutters, we replaced the roof, we added a second bathroom when our son Tyler came along in 2019. Sarah started a vegetable garden in the backyard that she still tends to this day. And I built a fire pit out of stones I hauled from a landscaping supply place in Sunbury. We had barbecues in the summer and hot chocolate around the pit in the fall. Our kids rode bikes with the other neighborhood kids. We knew our neighbors well enough to borrow a cup of sugar, but not so well that we felt obligated to attend their birthday parties. It was, in every way that mattered, the American dream. Our next-door neighbors for most of those years were the Hendersons. Mike and Carol, both retired teachers, quiet as church mice. They went to bed at 9 o'clock every night and spent their mornings drinking coffee on their screened-in porch. Carol would bring us zucchini from her garden every August, and Mike would sometimes help me move heavy furniture when Sarah decided she wanted to rearrange the living room again. When they announced they were selling in late 2022 to move closer to their grandkids in Florida, I was genuinely sad to see them go. I should have known that whatever came next would not live up to the Hendersons, but I never could have imagined Derek Lawson. He moved in on a Saturday morning in April 2023. I remember because Sarah and I were working in the front yard, pulling weeds and spreading mulch, and we watched the moving truck back into the driveway next door. A white BMW 5 Series pulled up behind it and out stepped Derek. Mid-30s, maybe 34 or 35. Expensive sunglasses, designer jeans that looked too tight, sneakers that I later learned cost $400 a pair. He looked like the kind of guy who would describe himself as an entrepreneur but could never quite explain what his company actually did. I walked over to introduce myself, the way you do when a new neighbor moves in. I extended my hand and told him welcome to the neighborhood. He shook it, but his grip was limp and his attention was already on his phone. He told me his name was Derek, he was coming from a condo in the short north, and he was excited to finally have some space. Then he turned away before I could even finish my sentence about the garbage pickup schedule. First impression? Not great. But I told myself not to judge. Maybe he was stressed from the move, maybe he was dealing with something I did not know about. People deserve the benefit of the doubt, right? Has anyone else dealt with a neighbor who gave you a bad first impression? Let me know in the comments if your gut feeling turned out to be right. The first few weeks were uneventful. Derek kept to himself, which was fine by me. I noticed he had a lot of visitors, cars coming and going at odd hours, but I figured it was just friends helping him settle in. I noticed his lawn was not being maintained, but maybe he hadn't found a service yet. I noticed the BMW in his driveway never seemed to move during normal work hours, but maybe he worked from home like half the world did now.
Then the packages started disappearing. The first one was in mid-May. I had ordered a new pair of running shoes from Amazon, nothing fancy, about $85. The tracking said delivered, but when I got home from work, there was nothing on my porch. I checked the bushes, checked with Sarah to see if she had brought it in, even walked around to the back in case the driver had left it there for some reason. Nothing. I contacted Amazon, filed a claim, and they sent me a replacement. I figured the driver had delivered it to the wrong address or it had been grabbed by some random opportunist passing through. These things happen. You move on. The second package was in early June. This one was Tyler's birthday present, a Lego set Sarah had ordered because she is better at remembering that stuff than I am. Tracking said delivered at 2:47 p.m. When Sarah got home at 5:30, nothing. We filed another claim. Amazon was starting to sound suspicious, like maybe we were running some kind of scam. A different Lego set arrived a week later, and Tyler never knew the difference, but it bothered me. 2 packages in a month was not a coincidence. I started to wonder if we had a porch pirate problem in the neighborhood. I mentioned it to Greg Patterson, who lives 3 houses down, when I saw him walking his golden retriever one evening. Greg said he had not had any issues, but maybe it was worth looking into a security camera. He had installed a Ring doorbell the year before and loved it. That conversation changed everything. I ordered the Ring doorbell that night. It arrived 4 days later, and yes, I made sure to watch for the delivery truck and grab it the moment it hit my porch. I installed it that weekend, running the wires myself because I am too cheap to pay for professional installation on something that straightforward. Sarah thought I was overreacting. I told her it was just peace of mind. $150 to know what was happening at our front door. Worth every penny. If I had only known how much I would end up using that camera, I would have installed one years earlier. The third time it happened, everything came into focus. It was a Thursday afternoon in late June. I was working from home that day, something I do 2 or 3 times a week when my workload allows it. I had ordered a new keyboard for my office setup, a mechanical one with those satisfying clicky keys that Sarah says drives her crazy when I type late at night. The tracking showed it was out for delivery, and I was actually excited to set it up. At 2:15 p.m., I heard the FedEx truck pull up outside. I heard the thump of a package hitting the porch. I waited for the doorbell notification, but nothing came. The driver must not have rung the bell. No big deal. I finished the email I was writing, saved my spreadsheet, and walked to the front door about 30 seconds later. No package. I opened the door wider, stepped onto the porch, looked left and right. Nothing on the steps. The FedEx truck was already gone, turning the corner at the end of the street. And then I saw it. Derek's front door. Closing. Just a sliver of movement, the last inch of painted wood swinging shut. My stomach dropped. I stood there on my porch, staring at his house, and I knew. I knew with absolute certainty that he had taken my package.
that he had been watching for the truck just like I had been, that the moment it pulled away, he had walked across his lawn, grabbed my keyboard off my porch, and carried it into his house. But I had no proof, not yet. That night, I set up the Ring doorbell app on my phone with notifications turned on for any motion detection. I adjusted the sensitivity, I made sure the angle captured my entire porch and most of the walkway. Then, I waited. 2 days later, I caught him. It was a Saturday morning, around 10. Sarah had taken the kids to swimming lessons, and I was sitting in the living room watching some documentary about World War II on the History Channel. My phone buzzed with a motion alert. I tapped it immediately. There he was. Derek Lawson, in a tank top and those ridiculous expensive sneakers, walking up my front steps like he owned the property. He paused, looked left, looked right, and then bent down and picked up the small box the mailman had delivered 20 minutes earlier. It was a replacement filter for our air purifier. $12, not valuable at all. But he did not know that, and he did not care. I watched him carry my package across the lawn and disappear into his house. Clear as day. His face, his clothes, his hands on my property. Time-stamped, recorded, saved to the cloud. My blood was boiling. If this made you mad just hearing it, smash that like button. I was shaking as I watched the replay. This man, this absolute parasite, had been stealing from me for months, maybe longer, maybe since the day he moved in. And he had no idea he had just been caught. I spent the rest of that morning replaying the footage. I saved it to multiple devices. I uploaded it to Google Drive. I was not going to let this evidence disappear. That evening, after dinner, after the kids were in bed, I told Sarah I was going next door to have a conversation. She asked if I wanted her to come with me. I said no. This was between me and Derek. I knocked on his door at 8:15 p.m. The sun was just starting to set, painting the sky that gold and orange color you get in Ohio summers. I could hear music inside, some kind of bass-heavy electronic stuff that was probably annoying his neighbors on the other side too. The door opened, and there he was, smirking, like he already knew why I was there and found it amusing. I kept my voice calm. I told him I knew he had been taking my packages. I told him I had footage. I told him I was giving him one chance to return everything he had stolen and promised to never do it again. He laughed, actually laughed, right in my face. Then he leaned against the doorframe, crossed his arms, and said, "Prove it. Maybe you are just forgetful. Maybe your wife is ordering stuff and not telling you about it. Maybe you should check with the delivery companies instead of bothering your neighbors." I pulled out my phone. I showed him the video. I watched his face as he watched himself stealing my package. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe? Or anger? But it was gone as fast as it appeared. He shrugged. He actually shrugged. Then he said, "That camera could be pointed at anyone's house. Could be your other neighbor. Could be someone who looks like me. Lot of guys around here wear tank tops in the summer." I stood there, speechless. He was not even trying to deny it convincingly. He was just stonewalling me, daring me to do something about it. He knew, and I knew, that I was not the type to start a physical confrontation. He was betting on my civility, on my reluctance to escalate. He told me to have a good night, and he closed the door in my face. I walked back to my house feeling like I had been punched in the gut. Sarah was waiting in the kitchen. She asked how it went. I told her he denied everything. She asked what we were going to do now. I said I did not know, but I would figure it out. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in my head. What were my options? I could keep confronting him, but he had made it clear he did not care. I could try to catch him in the act and physically stop him, but that could escalate into something dangerous. I could contact the police. That seemed like the obvious next step. The next morning, I called the Westerville Police Department non-emergency line. I explained the situation. I told them about the missing packages, the video evidence, the confrontation. The officer I spoke with was sympathetic but not encouraging. She explained that package theft was a common problem and they took it seriously. However, prosecuting these cases was difficult.
The footage showed someone taking a box, but without proof of what was in the box and its value, it was hard to pursue felony charges. For misdemeanor theft, the county prosecutor often declined to file charges because the courts were backed up and resources were limited. She suggested I continue documenting incidents and consider requiring signature confirmation on deliveries. I thanked her and hung up, feeling more frustrated than before. A week later, Derek struck again. This time it was not a $12 air filter. It was my wife's medication. Sarah takes a prescription for her thyroid condition, and her doctor had switched her to a new medication that our local pharmacy did not carry. We had ordered it through a mail-order pharmacy, $218 for a 3-month supply. The tracking showed it delivered at 1:23 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was at the office. Sarah was at work. When she got home, nothing on the porch. I checked the ring footage that night. Derek. Same routine. Walk up, look around, grab, leave. I was beyond angry. This was not just inconvenient anymore. This was affecting my wife's health. She had to call her doctor, explain the situation, get an emergency prescription filled at a local pharmacy for 5 times the cost. We ate the loss because what else could we do? I went next door again that night. This time, I was not calm. I showed him the new footage. I told him this was medication my wife needed. I told him he was crossing a line. I told him the next time I was calling the police. He leaned against the doorframe again, same smug posture, and said something that still makes my blood boil when I think about it. He said maybe your wife should pick up her own meds instead of leaving them on the porch like an invitation. Then he winked at me. Winked! I reported the incident to the police the next day, a different officer this time. He came to my house, watched the footage, took notes. He agreed it looked like theft.
But he explained the same thing the first officer had told me. Without proof of the contents and value, without Derek being caught with the items in his possession, it was difficult to build a case that the prosecutor would actually pursue. I asked what I was supposed to do, just let him keep stealing from me? The officer said I could try installing more cameras, getting a lockbox for deliveries, or having packages sent to my workplace. He said sometimes these situations resolve themselves when the person realizes they are being watched. But Derek did not care about being watched. He knew the cameras were there. He knew I was documenting everything. And then he started waving. What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts below. The waving started in August. Every time he took a package, which was now happening almost weekly, he would look directly at my Ring camera and give a little wave. Sometimes a thumbs up. Once, I swear, he blew a kiss. He was mocking me. He knew I was watching. He knew I was furious. And he knew there was nothing I could do about it. I filed 3 more police reports that month. Each time, the officer would come, watch the footage, shake their head sympathetically, and explain the limitations of what they could pursue. One officer suggested I try talking to my city council representative about increased patrols in the neighborhood. Another suggested I hire a lawyer to explore civil remedies. A third, and I appreciated his honesty, told me off the record that guys like Derek knew exactly how to work the system. They stayed just under the threshold for serious prosecution. Sarah was getting scared, not of Derek directly, but of what this was doing to me. She said I was obsessed. She said I spent more time watching the Ring app than watching our kids. She said maybe we should just accept that this was our life now and find workarounds. Lockboxes, Amazon lockers, signature confirmation on everything. I told her I was not going to let some smug thief dictate how we live in our own home. She said she was worried about my blood pressure. She was not wrong. My doctor had put me on medication for hypertension earlier that year. The stress was not helping. I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, waking up to check my phone every time I heard a car door slam outside. I was short-tempered at work, snapping at colleagues who did not deserve it. I was missing bedtime stories because I was too busy reviewing footage and documenting incidents. September came, and with it, a brief respite. Derek seemed to slow down. Maybe he had sold everything he had stolen and needed to wait for demand to build up again. Maybe he was getting bored. Maybe he was testing whether I had given up. I had not given up.
I was planning. The idea came to me on a Sunday afternoon in late September. Sarah had taken the kids to her mother's house for the day, and I was sitting in my home office, staring at the wall, running through options for the 1,000th time. I needed proof that Derek had stolen my packages. Not just footage of him taking boxes, but evidence that the boxes were mine and that he had them in his possession. That was when I remembered something from a podcast I had listened to months earlier. A true crime show, I cannot remember which one, where a victim had tracked stolen property using GPS.
They had put an air tag in a purse, let it get stolen, and then tracked it to the thief's location. I sat up straighter. Could that work? I spent the next 3 hours researching GPS trackers, air tags, tile, third-party options. I learned about how they worked, their range limitations, their accuracy. I learned that air tags could be detected by iPhones and would eventually notify someone if they were traveling with them for an extended period, but that tile trackers did not have that feature. I learned that GPS accuracy in suburban areas was typically within 15 to 30 feet, more than enough to pinpoint which house something was in. But the tracker alone was not enough. I needed the police to take this seriously. I needed them to show up with a warrant, search Derek's house, and find my property with my name on it. So I started planning, and I mean really planning. I got a notebook, the kind with the graph paper I use for sketching out financial projections for clients. I made lists, I made timelines, I made contingency plans for every scenario I could think of. First, I needed to create a package that Derek would want to steal. It had to look valuable enough to be worth taking, but not so valuable that it would raise suspicions about being a trap. I decided on a medium-sized box, the kind that might contain electronics or expensive household items. Second, I needed to put something inside that would be memorable, something that would make the police sit up and pay attention when they found it, something that Derek could not explain away. That was when my buddy Mike came into the picture. Mike Hernandez, a guy I have known since college. He lives about 20 minutes away in Delaware, Ohio. We play poker once a month, or at least we did until life got too busy. Most importantly for my purposes, Mike has 4 cats. I called Mike that Sunday evening and explained my situation. He had heard me complain about Derek before, but I had not told him how bad it had gotten. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you need from me?" I told him I needed used cat litter, a lot of it. Mike laughed so hard I thought he was going to choke. When he recovered, he said he could provide that in abundance. His cats went through litter like it was going out of style. He asked what I was going to do with it. I told him I was going to give Derek exactly what he deserved. Mike said count him in. The next weekend, I drove to Mike's house and picked up 2 garbage bags full of used cat litter. His garage smelled like ammonia and regret. I loaded the bags into my trunk, trying not to breathe too deeply. Mike stood in the driveway, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. He asked if he was sure about this. He asked if it was legal. I had researched that too. Sending someone used cat litter is not illegal. Disgusting, yes. Illegal, no. As long as it was not hazardous material, and I was not shipping it through the Postal Service in a way that violated regulations, I was in the clear. And I was not shipping it anywhere. I was just leaving it on my own porch for someone else to steal. Mike wished me luck. He said to let him know how it went. Back home, I set up my operation in the garage while Sarah was at work and the kids were at school. I had purchased a medium cardboard box from a shipping supply store, along with packing tape and a mailing label.
I had ordered a tile GPS tracker online, paid for with a prepaid debit card because I am paranoid like that. I lined the box with a garbage bag to contain the smell. Then I poured in the cat litter. The stench was immediate and overwhelming, even with the bag partially sealed. My eyes watered. I almost gagged. This was going to be perfect. But I wanted to add something else, something that would make the message crystal clear. I went to my computer and designed a series of flyers. On each one, I printed "stolen property" in large red letters at the top. Below that, I included my name, my address, and the text, "This package was stolen from the porch of," followed by my address again. At the bottom, I added screenshots from my Ring camera footage showing Derek taking previous packages with timestamps visible. I printed 50 copies on bright yellow paper. Then I layered them throughout the cat litter, so no matter how Derek dug through the box, he would find them. A little surprise buried in his prize. The GPS tracker went in the center, wrapped in a plastic bag to protect it from the moisture. I activated it, tested it on the app, watched the little dot appear on my phone showing its location in my garage. Perfect. I sealed the box with packing tape.
I printed a shipping label addressed to me, complete with a tracking number from a legitimate-looking template I had found online. To anyone glancing at it, it looked like a normal delivery. Then I waited for the right moment. I chose a Wednesday in early October. Sarah was at work, the kids were at school. I had taken a personal day, telling my boss I had some home maintenance to deal with. Not entirely a lie. At 10:30 a.m., I placed the box on my front porch. I positioned it exactly where the delivery drivers usually left packages, in clear view of my Ring camera and in clear view of Derek's front windows. Then I went inside, sat down in my living room, and opened the Tile app on my phone. The little dot sat motionless on Maple Street. My heart was pounding. My palms were sweating. I felt like a hunter waiting in a blind for prey to appear. An hour passed. The dot did not move. Another hour. Nothing. At 1:15 p.m., I started to wonder if Derek was even home. His BMW was in the driveway, but that did not mean anything. Maybe he was out with a friend. Maybe he was sleeping. Maybe he had finally decided to stop stealing packages. At 1:47 p.m., my Ring app buzzed. I grabbed my phone so fast I almost dropped it. There, on my screen, was Derek Lawson. Same routine, walk up the steps, look left, look right, bend down, grab the box. But this time, there was something different in his expression. The box was heavier than usual, and I could see him adjusting his grip, a slight frown crossing his face as he wondered what could be inside. Then he did it. He looked directly at my camera, smirked, and waved. I watched him carry my box across the lawn and into his house. The front door closed behind him. I switched to the Tile app. The dot was moving. It crossed the property line between our houses and stopped inside Derek's residence. The GPS coordinates confirmed it. My box, my property, my evidence was now inside his home. If you think I did the right thing, let me know with a like. I gave it 10 minutes. I wanted to make sure Derek had opened the box, discovered its contents, and had time to panic.
I imagined him cutting through the tape, maybe expecting electronics, maybe expecting something he could flip on eBay for a quick buck. I imagined his face as the smell hit him. I imagined his horror as he pulled out a handful of flyers with his face printed on them, surrounded by used cat litter. Then I called the police. This time, I was calm. I was prepared, I was polite and professional, like I was presenting quarterly earnings to a board of directors. I explained that my neighbor had been stealing my packages for months. I explained that I had video evidence. I explained that this morning I had placed a package on my porch containing a GPS tracking device, and that I had recorded my neighbor taking the package and carrying it into his home. I explained that I could prove at this very moment that my property was inside his house. The dispatcher asked me to hold. She put me on hold for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 4 minutes. Then she came back and said officers were being dispatched to my location. 22 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled up on Maple Street. I met the officers at the curb, introduced myself, and walked them through everything. I showed them the Ring footage on my phone. I showed them the Tile app showing the GPS location. I showed them my documentation of previous incidents, every police report number, every timestamp, every screenshot. Officer Martinez, the senior of the two, looked at me with something approaching respect. He said this was the most prepared victim he had ever encountered in a package theft case. I told him I am an accountant. Documentation is what I do. He nodded and said, "Let us go knock on your neighbor's door." I stayed on my porch as instructed. I watched the 4 officers, 2 more had arrived while I was showing my evidence, walk up to Derek's front door. Officer Martinez knocked, 3 firm knocks. A long pause. Then the door opened. I could not hear what was said, but I could see the body language. Derek looked annoyed at first, then confused, then something I had never seen on his face before. Afraid. Officer Martinez was talking, gesturing toward my house, holding up his phone to show something. Derek shook his head. He tried to close the door. Officer Martinez put his foot in the way. More talking. Derek's face was getting red. He was waving his arms. One of the other officers took a step closer. The situation was escalating. Then something shifted. Derek's shoulders slumped. He stepped back from the door.
Officer Martinez said something to the other officers, and two of them entered the house while the others stayed with Derek on the porch. I waited. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. 5 minutes later, Officer Martinez emerged from Derek's house holding my box. Even from across the lawn, I could see the yellow paper spilling out of the open top. He was holding it at arm's length, his nose wrinkled. He walked back to me, carrying the box like it was a biohazard, which I suppose it was. He asked if this was my package. I confirmed that it was. He asked if I wanted to explain the contents. I told him the truth. I said I suspected my neighbor of stealing my packages based on months of video evidence and police reports. I said I created a package specifically to track its location when stolen and to provide unmistakable proof of ownership. I said the cat litter was unusual, yes, but not illegal. I said the flyers were documentation in case the thief tried to claim ignorance of who the package belonged to. Officer Martinez stared at me for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he cracked a smile. He said that was one way to handle it. Then he told me something that made every minute of frustration, every sleepless night, every skipped bedtime story worth it. He said when they searched the area where Derek had placed my box, they found 3 other packages with my name on them, unopened, stacked in his garage behind some lawn equipment. He said the GPS tracker and the documented evidence was more than enough for an arrest. He said Derek was being taken into custody on suspicion of mail theft, a federal offense under Title 18 of the United States Code. I asked Officer Martinez to repeat that last part. He said, "Federal offense." I almost cried. I am not too proud to admit it. After months of being told there was nothing anyone could do, after being mocked and waved at and treated like I was the problem, someone was finally taking this seriously. Derek was handcuffed and placed in the back of a police cruiser. As they drove past my house, I could see him through the window, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. He saw me standing on my porch, and for a moment, our eyes met. I did not wave. I did not smirk. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, watching him go. That evening, after the police had finished their reports and the cruisers had left, I sat down with Sarah and told her everything about the cat litter, about the GPS tracker, about the flyers with Derek's face on them. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said she was proud of me. She said she was sorry she had ever suggested I let it go. She said, and this is what I remember most, she said that watching me refuse to be a victim had reminded her why she married me. We opened a bottle of wine that night. We sat on the back porch, watching the fireflies blink in the yard, and we talked about everything and nothing until the stars came out. If you are enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. More satisfying payback stories coming your way. The weeks after Derek's arrest were complicated. There were court dates to attend, depositions to give, evidence to provide. The federal prosecutor assigned to the case was a no-nonsense woman named Amanda Chen, who took mail theft extremely seriously. She told me that package theft had become epidemic in suburban neighborhoods, and she was determined to make an example of cases where she had solid evidence. Derek, it turned out, had a gambling addiction. He had been selling the stolen items on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and eBay to fund his losses at various online poker sites and sports betting apps. When investigators searched his house thoroughly, they found receipts and records of dozens of items sold, many of which matched descriptions of packages reported missing in our neighborhood and surrounding areas. I was not his only victim. 3 other families on Maple Street came forward after his arrest. Greg Patterson had lost a portable speaker worth $200. The Nguyen's across the street had lost a birthday present for their daughter.
An elderly woman named Mrs. Kowalski, who lived alone 4 houses down, had lost her late husband's watch, which she had sent out for repair and was having shipped back to her. Mrs. Kowalski's testimony at Derek's preliminary hearing was devastating. She was 83 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and she looked the judge directly in the eye and said that that watch was the last thing she had of her husband of 52 years. She said she cried every day for a month when it went missing. She said she never thought she would see it again. The prosecutor found the watch in Derek's possession. It had not been sold yet. He was planning to list it the week after his arrest.
Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal early on. He argued that his client had a gambling addiction, that he needed treatment, not incarceration, that the value of the stolen items was relatively low. Amanda Chen was not having it. She pushed for the maximum penalties available under federal law, arguing that the pattern of behavior, the mocking of victims, and the violation of the sanctity of people's homes warranted serious consequences. In the end, Derek took a plea deal in late November. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of mail theft and agreed to pay restitution to all identified victims. He was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to seek treatment for his gambling addiction and banned from using online betting platforms. The day the sentence was handed down, Sarah and I were sitting in the courtroom. When the judge announced the prison term, I felt something I had not expected. Relief, yes, but also a strange emptiness. I had spent so many months focused on catching Derek, on building my case, on planning my revenge. Now that it was over, I was not sure what to do with myself. Sarah squeezed my hand. She whispered that it was done now. We could move on. She was right. Derek's house sat empty for 2 months after his conviction. His family came to clear it out. A grim-looking woman I assumed was his mother, and a younger man who might have been his brother. They would not make eye contact with any of the neighbors. They loaded up a rental truck and were gone by the end of January 2024. The house sold in March. The new neighbors are a young couple named James and Priya, both doctors at a hospital in Columbus. They are quiet, friendly, and have never once looked at a package on my porch with anything other than indifference. We have had them over for dinner twice now. To everyone dealing with difficult neighbors right now, you are not alone. It has been over a year since Derek's arrest. I think about it less often now, but there are moments when it all comes flooding back. When a delivery truck pulls up, when I hear a door close next door, when I smell cat litter at the pet store and have to suppress a smile. The experience changed me in ways I am still processing. I am more vigilant now, which Sarah says is both a good and a bad thing. I document everything, not just potential crimes, but everything. Our home maintenance schedule is on a spreadsheet. Our household inventory is photographed and uploaded to the cloud. I have emergency plans for scenarios that will probably never happen. But I am also more confident.
I spent 42 years being the quiet guy, the one who did not make waves, the one who let things slide because confrontation was uncomfortable. Derek showed me what happens when you let the wrong person take advantage of that. He mistook my patience for weakness, my politeness for pushover. He found out he was wrong. My packages arrive safely now, every single one. I still check the Ring app occasionally, but it is a habit more than a necessity. The motion alerts show delivery drivers, mail carriers, and the occasional stray cat wandering through the yard. Sometimes, late at night when I cannot sleep, I pull up the old footage of Derek waving at my camera. I watch his smug face, his confident posture, his absolute certainty that he was untouchable. Then I close the app and smile. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and sometimes it smells like cat piss. I sleep better now. My blood pressure is down. Sarah says I am more present with the kids, less distracted by whatever vendetta was consuming my attention. Emma and Tyler have no idea any of this happened. They were too young, and we kept it from them. Maybe someday, when they are older, I will tell them the story. Maybe it will teach them something about standing up for yourself, about using your brain instead of your fists, about the power of patience and preparation. Or maybe it will just be a funny story about the time Dad filled a box with cat poop and got someone arrested. Kids love that kind of thing. The last I heard, Derek was released from prison after serving 14 months of his 18-month sentence. Good behavior, apparently. He is back in Ohio, living somewhere in the Cleveland area, according to the victim notification system I am signed up for. I do not know if he has gotten help for his gambling. I do not know if he has changed. Honestly, I don't care. What I care about is this. My family is safe. My home is secure. My packages sit on my porch until I am ready to bring them inside, and no one touches them. That is all I ever wanted. If you have made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I hope it was entertaining. I hope it was satisfying.
And I hope if you are ever in a situation like mine, it gives you some ideas. Got your own nightmare neighbor story? Share it in the comments. I would love to hear it. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button and join this community. There are more stories like this coming. Stories about regular people who refused to be victims and found creative, legal ways to get justice. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and remember, sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. The Accountant from Maple Street, signing off.